It's another episode of Social Distancing at the Chamber. As always, joined by Chamber CEO Glenn Hammer for a little something we call Happy Hour with Hammer. Glenn, we start out this week with another A-lister from the state legislature. Why don't you introduce our special guest?
It's a real treat to have our friend, Representative Cesar Chavez, with us here this evening. One of the most thoughtful legislators. He's really done a great job down at the Capitol bringing people together. And we've done a lot of different media type of things together on trade, U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement. You were a leader down at the legislature, and you definitely were a driving force to help galvanize support, which turned out to be a very happy result with the ultimate ratification of the agreement. Representative, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Glenn. Garrick, thank you very much for having me, but more than anything for having these type of communications for all of our constituents and every individual here in the state of Arizona. It's always been a great pleasure to work with the Arizona Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you. First, just want to start out just your perspective as a legislator. What's going on right now in your district as we're dealing with this once in 100-year situation?
Well, we're definitely living in unprecedented times, and I don't think anybody on January 1st, 2020 thought that this is exactly how we were going to spend our spring, right? Especially in beautiful Arizona. We've missed out on baseball season, on spring training, which we're notorious for. And although it is very sad, especially for, we're going into graduation season now, and having the kids not being able to graduate the traditional way puts us in a very nostalgic moment. But more so, it's to keep everybody safe, to ensure that individuals are keeping their distance and flattening that curve. In Legislative District 29, which I represent, Maryvale, South Glendale, and Litchfield Park, now for the fourth year, we're seeing a huge downturn because of the traffic of restaurants. We have a lot of restaurants, mom and pop shops is the majority of them. We're definitely seeing a huge downturn in traffic. Not many people partaking in their services. But one thing that I will say is that these individuals are so resilient. I've seen individuals go into a mail service, such as like if they sold clothing, they now go into a mail service so people can go online or give them a call and they'll mail the clothing to them. I have a good friends who own a cigar shop. They've also gone mail service and delivery as well. So they're definitely out there doing what they can do within the parameters of the law, and I definitely take my hat off to them, because really when push comes to shove, these individuals are really looking out to grow Arizona's economy.
I love those examples of the ingenuity of the people who live in our state. And, we're finding a lot of these stories where people are transitioning. They're either figuring out ways to mail things, or they're making new products, whether it's hand sanitizer or face shields or you name it. What are your thoughts on, we have portions, a lot of our economy is still up and running, even though we were seeing record unemployment. We've got takeout service, and you have these creative things going on. But what are your thoughts in terms of, as we thaw out the areas of our economy that have been frozen or darn close to it?
Well, Glenn and Garrick, I've like I said, have had the pleasure of working with you all in the Arizona Chamber of Commerce. And another good portion of my district are distribution centers. Mm-hmm. We just, White Claw had just announced. We have other entities like Coca-Cola and Amazon just south of the district. So these corporations that are running our economy right now are what are keeping us afloat, are really keeping our local restaurants and our local gas stations and the mom and pop shops. They're the ones that continue to consume from them. And I will say that even though our economy in its full run is sort of in a pause, but when you have entities like Microsoft investing in the West Valley, and you have Nike investing out in Goodyear. That isn't stopping. That has not stopped. It continues. I actually was just driving up Bullard a couple of minutes ago, and I see that construction is still going. And it looks like now more than ever, it's kind of like the best time to do it because there isn't any traffic, so streets are being repaved. I'm a very optimistic individual, and I try to look at the positive out of everything. And it's very unfortunate that we're going through this, especially those that have been affected by COVID-19, and not to say the deaths that we've witnessed here in the state of Arizona and in the world. But with that being said, I will say that the optimism of all this is really a renovation in the way that we see economy and really gearing up toward a stronger workforce development and economic development here in the state of Arizona. I think that Governor Ducey has done an excellent job at leading Arizona into the new generation of being a tech state, of being a distribution state, and putting us at the forefront of our next generation economy.
Is it frustrating as a lawmaker that you can't go down to the Capitol and pass a bill to eradicate this virus, and instead you are sort of doing your best to calibrate your activity around what the virus is going to do rather than the other way around?
Yeah, Garrick, I mean, it's very unfortunate that, right now everything's sort of at a pause and that we're in recess. I would love to be down at the Capitol right now and debating bills and passing bills or voting against bills, whatever it might be. It's very saddening because I think that every one of my lawmaker colleagues, they all get elected because they have their heart in their right place. Even though I might not agree with everybody, I know that they're doing what they feel is the best for their constituency. And so right now it's very frustrating not being able to just hop in the car, drive down the freeway, and get to the state capitol to talk about these issues. But at least on the end of the Democratic caucus, we've held conversations with other colleagues to ensure that we can start strategizing and sharing those strategies with Speaker Bowers or President Fan, and try to get their ear on what we feel is the best solution moving forward. One thing that I will say is I hope that we're all in drafting mode and ensuring that we're able to allow our healthcare industry to really function properly if, God forbid, another pandemic comes around or a second wave of coronavirus comes around. I really hope that we're looking at how can we be of assistance to the mom and pop shops and providing them, access to some of these funds and capital to be able to keep afloat. And I think that, the SBA has done a good job at providing that assistance to many companies. I don't think it's enough, nor do I think that the way that it goes about is the right way all the time. But I do think that it is a way of assisting our small businesses. But I think that the state of Arizona can definitely do a better job at that too.
Have you heard from constituents yet in your district who have been able to get either the PPP or the EIDL loan?
No, I did recommend it. I did share the link to a couple of them. One of them, I think, had when she tried to do it, it was too late. The funds had exhausted. Right. So I told her, that's when there was an announcement that there would be a renewal of funds. What that would be, who knew at the time? But we were able to kind of put a placeholder for her to see if she could go in on the second round. So I hope that she does. I will be following up with her. She actually has a beauty salon.
Yeah, that's important that all the eligible small businesses, including the smaller small businesses, have access. We've partnered with the Arizona Small Business Association and the Arizona Commerce Authority in a program, azcaresact.com. Is that right? caresactaz.com. Sorry, there's too many things in my head. To help steer small businesses through this. But if I could quickly switch gears to education, because I know that's something you've been very concerned about, and you've been a thought leader in the legislature on these issues. What are we seeing? What are you seeing in your district, Maryville, when it comes to the digital divide and that pretty abrupt transition from in-class instruction to online?
Well, I'm going to applaud our school districts because they really stepped up to the plate. I mean, it's unfathomable that this would have ever happened and how our schools were going to deal with it. But, on day one, when the governor and Superintendent Hoffman announced that the schools were going to close till further notice, or at least for the next couple of weeks before they announced that they wouldn't reopen this year, they got on it with the meals, with looking at different options on how they're going to provide their curriculum. I unfortunately represent a very low income district. And so many of these children count on the meals that they receive at school to be able to get through the day. And it's very sad, but it's the realities of our communities. And I'm very happy to say that our school districts have really proven that they care for their students, that they care for their community. And so parents have been very happy. The transition into, for example, an online curriculum has been a little bit more difficult. School districts like Cartwright, like Phoenix Union, have provided laptops for their students. So that was, a huge investment on their part, but it was the right thing to do. And we've partnered up with organizations like Cox Communication to be able to provide free or low cost access to the internet. So it's really been a collaborative unity between many organizations, companies, and our public schools, for sure.
That's good to hear. We've covered through some of our outlets the efforts of districts like the ones you mentioned, and also Cox. Look, it's not been perfect, but there's some really innovative leaders, whether it's in the K-12 district sector or you've got some great charters in your district.
Yeah.
People have been as nimble as they can be, and they're doing their best to deliver education to these kids during a really unusual time.
They definitely have, and I'm glad that you also mentioned the charter schools. Mac Esau over at the Maryville Preparatory, a Great Heart School, and over at the Academy of Math and Sciences, Western Schools. They've all done an amazing job at keeping connected with their students throughout the year. Mm-hmm. My nephew's also attending school, and they're constantly in communication with their teachers, and so everybody is doing the best that they can do. And I'm very sure that moving forward, we'll be able to get these kids back on track and ensure that they have all of the resources necessary for success.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, it's very, all those names that you mentioned, it's very impressive what they've done in record time, because we're all adjusting. I've got 2 teenage girls in my home, and in the middle of Zoom meetings, they may come in, grab breakfast. So it's we're all adjusting to this thing. But one of the things, I love your optimism, and Representative, I share it as well, because we're resilient people. It's a tough time, but we're determined to get out of this with some learnings and some strengths that perhaps we didn't have before entering this difficult period.
I one thing that I will say is I think that we value our educators much more than we did yesterday, with some of the parents that have their kids 24/7 now. So my applause go out to our educators, and Arizona really is a special place. And once again, although we might not always agree in politics, I will say that the people of the state of Arizona are the most resilient people, and that's what I love about living and representing this state.
I know you've got to run, but I wanted to close with something. It's the end of April. There's a chance that if you were at the Capitol, you'd be starting to wind business down, and then you'd be. It's not a partisan show, folks, but I'm just saying you'd be thinking about your campaign. This is a little weird. You're not going door to door right now, are you? You're candidates like you're kind of stuck right now, aren't you?
Well, that's the most frustrating part, is not being to go out and in this weather and knock on doors and meet with people. And one thing that I miss the most is shaking hands, and really feeling the connection between Cesar Chavez and his community. That's what I miss the most. But we continue to be in contact with our constituency. We're doing phone banking. We're doing text campaigns, social media. We'll be sending out mailers as well. More than anything, as the legislator, in terms of providing resources during COVID-19. Another great idea was ArizonaTogether.org. That website providing a list of all of the resources available to the state of Arizona and its populations. I think that we're all sort of in that bubble right now of how do we campaign? What does that look like in the age of COVID, especially being that the primary is only about 4 months away.
Yeah.
But we're definitely in continuous contact with our constituency through phone, computer, you name it.
Yeah. Glenn, take us home.
Well, we both look forward to seeing you in person sooner rather than later. We just always enjoy your company. And I'll also just say, what I also miss, Representative, is just your beautiful voice. It's really, you're just very, very gifted in many ways. And we want you to stay well, stay healthy. And we're just proud that you're a representative in the Arizona legislature.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you, Garrick. And as always, you know that my doors are open to you all and your membership to ensure that we have a strong economy, to ensure that we don't drop the ball, and moving forward, continuing to stitch that fabric of what makes Arizona such a great state.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for
Thank
doing
you
this.
both.
And stay healthy.
Same.